Welcome to Under the Hood, your fortnightly insight and recap into accounting's leading topics and practical insights. Brought to you by Accountants Daily.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Under the Hood, brought to you by Accountants Daily. Happy Tuesday, everyone. I hope you have all enjoyed the episodes we have released so far, because we have plenty more fantastic ones coming up this year. As always, my name is Imogen Wilson, and speaking of fantastic, today I am joined in the studio by accounting practice coach, TPB board member, co-chair of the GST Stewardship Group, fellow chartered accountant, and of course, the trademark lady in pink, the beautiful Amanda Gascoigne. Amanda, welcome to the studio. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great, Imogen, and thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
It is so nice to have you on the podcast finally, because I was just telling Amanda before, when I first started in this industry, Amanda was the first person I connected on LinkedIn with. So now I know there has been some whispers. I am departing the podcast, so it's really nice to end this journey with Amanda and hear more about all the fantastic work she does. Now, Amanda, it is February. We're recording at the start. How has the start of your year been?
It's been really full on, I would say. I do have quite a bit of January off to, just to reset and to get my own planning done. But we have had a very busy January, like the last week, pretty much when I was, getting organised for the year, because I think, so many practice owners don't really get into the swing of things until February, and I am probably a little bit like that. But as I hit the ground running this January, because those with children, once school goes back, that's when things really start, I think. And I talked about that in my first newsletter of 2026 as well, that I feel that once we hit February, then it's game on for the end of financial year.
I completely agree with that, because I think even for myself and probably a lot of other people in, even in the Big Four, January is kind of just like a trial month. It's like, I'll start tomorrow. And by the time you know it, it's February and it's actually, I have to lock in now.
And I know when I had the practice and, particularly when my children were little, I was always, around in January with them. So it feels like I love that cadence. And usually I can't sit still, but I tend to do more of my own, finalising the planning for the year and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also a bit of a birthday shout out moment for Amanda. It was her birthday just this week. Was it a good day, Amanda?
Had a great day, and I've had a great week, and ending the week here with you is amazing. And I really loved that you reminded me that I was the first person you connected with on LinkedIn, and I feel extremely honoured to be your final guest before you leave.
Oh, it's really sad, but it's also really, really nice that I can have you in to be
you.
The last one. Now, for everyone tuning in today, I have Amanda here to talk about a range of topics, because she is, as you have heard, a busy and very talented woman. So today we'll be touching on her coaching business, her experience in the accounting industry, GST, and we'll also be touching on a little bit of her role and why she's with and on the TPB board, which I think is a really important topic and something that is fantastic that she does. But before we do that, Amanda, give us an insight into who you are, your career, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, so Amanda Gascoigne, I'm a fellow chartered accountant and former practice owner. I had an accounting practice for 18 years, and I now work with small and solo accounting practice owners all over Australia and New Zealand, have better practices and better lives. So I've been in the profession for over 30 years and started that practice of mine from scratch in 99. And the reason being that there was no maternity leave policy where I was at. So, 27 years ago now. And I also really wanted that, wanted to combine, being a mum, but also not giving up my career. So flexibility and freedom were really important to me even back then, and that's definitely part of the philosophy that I teach now when I work with accounting practice owners. And it's something that they all want as well. That's why they went into practice. So I think it's, it's what I did. And then at about the 10-year mark when I was in practice, I tried to make a lot of changes, and we grew quite quickly. I worked from home. So even in those days, having a home-based business was quite unusual, particularly a chartered accounting, business. Finally sort of, got out after the children were about, 2 and 3, got a little office and got some staff and started to grow. So at that 10-year mark, I was sort of having some little issues that I knew I needed fixing. So I did a lot of work on my own. And then I also sought the services of a coach. So I've sort of been in the shoes of the people that, I work with now. In 2017, I sold my practice to my youngest brother. So that was really lovely because, when I started the practice and then grew that over that 18-year period, those clients were like my family as well. So it was really lovely to be able to hand over the baton to him. He came in about 4 years before that as a partner of the practice. So he was a partner of a different practice and bought in. And then we had that lovely transition.
Yeah.
And I guess, the majority of those clients are still with him today.
Wow.
I often get little messages that he saw such and such, and they said to say hello.
Oh.
So it's just really beautiful. So I sold out in 2017 to really focus on the coaching and also to be able to give back to the industry, which has been very, very good to me. And so that was in roles with the ATO and chartered accountants and just more broadly and really about, how I can make a positive impact and share some of the challenges, things that I'd overcome, things that I worked out myself, things that I learnt from others. So it's really been, a full circle, I guess, and being able to be in all those different pockets to have experience in all of that. I think is really lovely. Yeah. And, my career has been so rewarding.
So rewarding.
And, now doing the stewardship, the governance, it just seems it's just been, it's been a lot of hard work. And I've had to, entering a very male-dominated industry back then, it's been lovely.
Yeah. And I can imagine, your experience and having, all those avenues that you have been in and you've worked in, that would just make you such an attractive coach now because you understand where people are coming from and the problems they're going through.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So when you got to coach yourself, how did that kind of change what you were doing?
Yeah, so basically that was it was just it was a really great time in the business, but the only coaches available were really coaches for larger firms. It was really like everything in our industry, the majority of the products, services, coaches, even our representation in a lot of places has really been at the bigger end of town. So despite that, I wasn't put off by it, nor was I put off by the investment. So that was, 2008, 2009, $11,000 up front and $1,650 per month I was paying. But honestly, that investment was absolutely worth it.
Okay.
And, what I learned from that was a lot of different ways of thinking and the things that I still teach today. However, they were really, as I said, aimed at the larger end of town.
Yeah.
So I had to tweak and adjust a lot of that for a smaller regional size practice. I couldn't just add an extra couple of zeros onto a quote, even though I thought I was worth that. My small business clients were not going to pay that. Yeah. So I had to tweak processes. I had to tweak the way we did things. And so that was, one of also the impetus to, like, I sort of stayed in practice for another sort of 10 years after that, and really refined things and had everything ticking so well. And I was often called upon to see, what are you doing? How's that going? I'm still struggling. And I could see that niche for me to go out and share a lot of that with others. And, even in that coaching group, I was probably turning over the smallest amount of fees. It was still quite a bit of money, but it was smaller in comparison. But my profitability, my debtors, my WIP, and the satisfaction levels was, really high and one of the highest in the group. So I knew I was onto something.
Yeah, definitely. At what point when you were in your practice or in the profession and you thought, actually, I want to be a coach, or I want to go on the other side of this and help people like myself within this, going through the trenches?
I think it was that, because I think, a lot of what I had, I was lucky that I could afford, the time and also the investment to do that. And I just know that there were so many others that couldn't do that. And do you know what? People are still in that situation now.
Yeah.
I have people saying they'd love to work with me, but they just simply don't have the funds.
Yeah.
Practices aren't as profitable as what everyone thinks they are. Clients think their accountant's making a fortune, and that's not always the case. So, investing, whether it be in coaching services or even whether it be in technology and software, it is real impost for some smaller practices. So, I saw that niche, and the way that I work now, I have various price points. So I have premium products. And then I also have what I believe are really cost-effective ways of working with me in groups and in courses where people can really, get some strides in their business, learn different mindsets, the things that I've sort of learned over the years. And they have been learned not from just accounting industry, mentors and coaches, but also mentors, coaches, and just I look at other industries for inspiration.
Yeah, okay.
And, that I think that does shine through, that it's not, I've always sort of worked outside the square and brought my own personality, the colours, that would be, really, 10, 15 years ago would have been really unusual to have. In my offices I had bright blue and green and beautiful red leather chairs. And that was, people would come into my office and say, oh, wow, this doesn't look like a normal accounting office. They're used to more,
boring,
beiges, tonal colours. Yeah. And that's totally fine.
Of course.
But that was not didn't suit my personality. I wanted the colour. I wanted my staff to feel engaged, to love the environment they were working in. I wanted clients to feel really comfortable, that they could have difficult conversations, or they just felt, a lot of talking about numbers, people really struggle with that. So having a really beautiful environment. Yeah, so it's all of those little things that I think that, practice owners need to have available to them. And I just don't think that, up until, when I sort of entered the space, there really wasn't as many people doing this stuff for small and solo accounting practice owners.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would really appreciate what you do and, the warmth and personality you bring to it as well, and what you probably would have brought to your practice too, because I know now that I've, been in this industry for 2 years talking to people, there are so many people with great personalities like yourself who just can't unlock that and show their clients that because of obviously compliance burdens, they're struggling with profit, they don't have enough staff. How have you seen that transform over the period you've been in this industry? Has it always been a bit of an issue like that, or is it something more of an issue now?
I think it's always been an issue. I think it's always been an issue. It's been exacerbated a lot, I think, in more recent times. There is so much opportunity out there. And so we really need to make, being an accountant, coming and working in practice attractive. And I think that's one of the things I talk about, having and any business being attractive to clients, but also being attractive to employees. And if we are at stress levels and we're not enjoying ourselves, that actually is really, it's, like you said about being, excited and, being really positive, the opposite of that is also true. So when people are feeling like they're overworked, they've got these ridiculous workloads, they're not meeting deadlines, that sort of shows in a lot of places.
Yeah.
They think that it's not, but it does. So I think we need to be as attractive as possible as an industry to be able to get some of those, those HR issues, dealt with.
Yeah.
And it's not that easy, but it just does take time, and it does take, that different mindset as well. So in our practice, I definitely considered myself an employer of choice. We worked a 4.5-day work week all the way back then. And I remember I sold out in 2017. So we had 4.5-day work week. My staff loved it.
I would love it.
And we closed for lunch. We closed for lunch hours.
Yeah.
We provided, I had every Monday we had about, spent about $100 on groceries, and everyone could eat lunch and have nibbles and things like that during the day. It's just the little things, and they often don't cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
But they're the types of things that, we can do. But it's when we're busy and when we're just trying to meet the deadlines, it's quite often those things don't come easy, and you just can't think about how I could do things better.
Yeah.
So I feel that that's when talking to others, whether it be a coach, mentor, or just even as a community, how, you just don't realise how much you can learn and to be that sponge and say, oh, that might work for me, or I like that idea, but I don't think I'd do it exactly like that, but let's put my spin on it.
Yeah, definitely. I think also some people sometimes can be have that little bit of a competitive edge. My firm's doing this, we're doing these numbers, we have this many clients. But then sometimes it's not working for them, and they're too scared to open up to a community and say,
true.
What are you guys actually doing? Because I know it's the same in any industry.
Yes.
And we're all competitive beings sometimes, and we want to do well.
Yes.
And we want our businesses to do well.
Absolutely.
How do you kind of tackle with clients that might be struggling with a little bit of ego or pride that is actually getting in their way?
Yeah, it definitely gets in their way. And I think that it takes people too long, to actually take action. So I have people joining my programs or making that phone call to me. The majority of my inquiries or the majority of my bookings come through at really weird hours. They come through at
Amanda, I need you. It's 3 a.m., but I need you now.
2 or 3 in the morning would be not uncommon for me to get those, and it's almost like I'm at breaking point. I've tried all these things and it's not working. So I just feel that, we need to ask for help a lot earlier, and, because otherwise we shouldn't have to wear that weight on our shoulders.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of practice owners leave it too long because some of the changes that people can make, they can pretty much make after a phone call, because, they might either need reassurance, or they might actually, like one client recently booked a call, and prior to booking and before the actual appointment, actually did all these calculations, crunched all these numbers that they'd never actually crunched before, but thought, oh, Amanda might ask me those questions. So just by doing that, they came to the call so much more prepared, and they also sort of said, I think these are some of the issues. But before actually taking the time just to do even those, basic sort of calculations, not spending a lot of time, it just meant we could have a better conversation as well.
Yeah.
And they almost felt like, this is actually not as bad as what I thought it was. But
that would be a good feeling.
And it's quite often like that. So I feel that people need to, either do a little bit more work on their practices themselves, or then get someone and talk to, because, it is, when you're sharing a problem, it does seem easier.
Yeah.
And a client of mine actually phoned last night and said, I'm just sort of phoning, I just need a sanity check. And it's just things like that that can really make a difference. And also, if we think about some of the SOS calls we get from our clients, our business clients, that, just need to actually talk it out. And accountants are no different.
Yeah.
But I think they feel like we're so good at a lot of things. We're so good with numbers. Why can't I do this? And they just don't let themselves be able to stand in that space. I feel like, I'll figure it out. But trying to figure it out can be very expensive. Yeah. It can cause a lot of strain on your mental health and well-being, and it can show up in lots of other areas.
Yeah. Well, do you know, there's still that stigma that it's, I'm a numbers person, I'm a business person.
Yes.
Can't give in to my emotions. I've got too much compliance work to do. I've got so much admin. there's so much coming for me. I actually just don't have time to give in to those emotions.
Exactly. And, there is just so much, weighing on those people's shoulders.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't have to be that way. And that really gets me sad, particularly when we're hearing, people are at breaking point and they're thinking, do I really want to stay in this industry? And that's probably one of the other things that I've talked about is, many, many years ago, even pre-COVID, it's really, we talk about the attractiveness of the profession, bringing new people in. But I believe, and I've voiced this in many places over the years, we also have a retention problem.
Yeah.
And we need to actually show just as much attention to retaining good people in our industry.
Yeah.
Because it's tough.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine it's tough. And do you know what? And I'm obviously not an accountant, I say this all the time, but from my perspective and obviously writing about, this talent and retention problem, and then there's people coming to me and saying, actually we don't, people just aren't taking, like grads aren't taking the $60,000 jobs. And it's like, well, I myself have people who have come out of uni, they've done, their accounting degree, they're in a Big Four because they think that's the, experience they need to have. They're being asked to work 12 hours for $60,000 a year. And it's one of those things where you see recruiters on LinkedIn talking about it. You need to put in the hours and that's just part of being an accountant. But do you know what?
No.
You don't want to look back on your 20s and go, I sat in the PwC office for 12 hours and all other people went to Europe and stuff, and now I'm 50, have 3 kids, and I've never traveled the world or laid on the beach one day and said yes to drinks with friends and trips and all these fun stuff. And I just don't understand.
Well, I think part of it is that we think that's the way that we got ahead.
Yeah.
That's what we did. And it's almost like we're giving a free ride to others that if we give them a free ride.
Yeah.
And it's not, I actually think, particularly people in my generation and a little bit above, that we have actually done that, and we've done that, pretty willingly.
Of course,
which, in hindsight, we probably shouldn't have. But now the younger ones coming through, I think they've got that whole work-life balance a lot better.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're lazy. It's just that I think they've got a better perspective.
Yeah.
Now, my future daughter-in-law is also in accounting.
Really? That's so nice.
And we have lots of discussions, but she works for a really beautiful firm that doesn't expect that overtime. That if they do work overtime, they do actually get time in lieu. Now, I know that doesn't happen everywhere, and I told her how lucky that she is. Yeah. And I just think that we have to change that mindset. So, from my perspective, it's really like it's a culture piece, right? We need to actually think about this culture. What do we want for our own businesses and help foster that in everyone, whether it be our employees, because they are not going to work for $60,000 and work ridiculous hours. They will work, and I said it's all about being fair and, being fair, really. Yeah. And you want a good day's, work for their pay. Yeah. And I think if they're productive and they're using AI and they're doing things efficiently, getting the output, why do they need to actually be working those long hours? And from a practice owner, again, if we're working really long hours, the model is not right. Yeah. And we need to really look at that and not just say, oh, that's what it's how it's always been done. We've got to stop, accepting that as the norm and working out ways that we can get our work done in a standard week, that we can get our wages. And that's, another thing. It's not just, not being able to pay some of the grads. There's a lot of practice owners that are not actually being remunerated appropriately for the number of hours and the expertise and what they've got on the line. And that also saddens me. So, when I have those conversations with clients, we're looking at that. I'm looking at those numbers because I want them to be remunerated well. We have a lot, at stake, particularly when you've got, houses, you've got families. And I just feel like we need to actually take a step back and look at so many different areas of our practice. They're all related, and we just can't look at one in isolation. But I just think there's, and even I always like to look at this when I look at a problem, and probably talk about opportunities and that with different things that happen. But, that situation where we can't get people, well why can't we? What can we do better? And actually using that roadblock, problem, and try to find a solution and using that solution to better things.
Yeah.
And not just saying accepting it. Because I think and we can learn a lot from that the newer generation, and then others who actually really do value having, a life. And, and I think that a lot of practice owners, and me included, we love our businesses. We feel that's part of our identity, and we have to move out of that a little bit. And that might be moving out of our comfort zone because we know all this stuff.
Yeah.
And one thing I will pick up on when we talked about people not knowing the stuff, they're fantastic technically, usually very fantastic at, nurturing and creating relationships, not so much as running their own business. And that's not a failure. That's actually because we've never been taught that.
Yeah.
If we had been given that as training at uni or training from our previous employers, just like we've been given technical training, people would know this stuff. But all that stuff is really held very closely to our previous boss's chest.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder people don't know what KPIs to be aiming for, don't know about certain things about running a business or a practice because they've never been taught. So, that's what one thing a lot of people say, I didn't even know I had to be looking at that. I didn't know I should be monitoring that.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that I had to do that.
Yeah.
I've just done what was always done where I worked before, but that's also very different when the buck stops with you. So, there's a lot of stuff. So it's no wonder that people are feeling that pressure, but it's because often we haven't been taught it and we've got to learn different ways of thinking.
Definitely. Well, it is one of those things, because everyone wants to start a business, or everyone has this dream to start their dream business. They just don't know how to do it. How do you even run a business? Do people come to you and say, oh, I'm a business owner, and then you look at what they're doing and you go, oh, but are you? Are you running that business properly?
Exactly. And, that's one of the things that I believe that we've got, the barriers to entry to a lot of businesses are a lot lower than what they were, 20 years ago. For me to go into an accounting practice, the cost of getting, just software to do tax returns was very expensive.
Yeah.
All of that, there was no subscription models. You had to pay up front. So when I went paperless in 2008, it cost nearly $20,000 to do that. So by the time I got the software, got 2 screens on everyone's desk, all scanners, etc., it was a $20,000 project. Comparing that with what I thought I was going to do was get a beautiful big compactus, which is going to cost me probably about 10 or 15,000. I went paperless, but that was a big investment. These days with software, and it's all subscription based, really lucky. Very lucky to be able to do that. So I guess the barriers to entry of businesses are a lot easier, a lot lower. So people can just get an ABN and start out.
And then boom, I've got a business.
But one thing that I did with my, prospective clients coming into me is really talk to them, about the business. I didn't just go ahead, the quick response is quick, let's get these people an ABN so they can go out. It's like, okay, we need to look at structure. We need to look at all these things. I need to see where this business of yours is going to be viable. Like, what are you earning now as an employee? What's possible? And, you had to explain to people because they think, they're being hard done by getting this, a wage of 80 or 100,000 or 120 because their charge out rate is X. But they're not realising that they're not going to be able to walk into a business and charge 40 hours a week. And we know with all the admin, whether it be ATO, whether it be client stuff, whether it be marketing, pricing, CPD, which is a whole week, 40 hours a year, people need to look at that and understand that. And I just think there are lots of practice owners that aren't going through that even for themselves, let alone for clients. So when we actually can step back and do that, we can say to clients, this is what you're earning now. You've really got to be better off to be having a business. So where does that sit with the average wage? Where does that sit with the capability? You've got responsibilities. You're always on, and there's a lot of that, and I just don't think we're looking at that close enough, which is when I talk to accountants about what they're doing, and whether I do that on one-on-one or whether I do that in my courses, I feel that I can have a bigger ripple effect on the small business community, because once I teach the accountants how to do that, they can then replicate it with their own clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I can imagine if, accountants are having these business problems within their own practices and they're probably not running it in the best way that they could be. And then you add in problems like we've got coming in this year, AML, which a lot of people I know I've spoken to are pretending doesn't exist, which you definitely should, by the way, guys.
Yes.
It's really important. And payday super. Do you have a lot of people coming to you going, what am I doing with, when problems like this arise and they're like, I've got all of this, obligations coming in and I'm just, to put it nicely, F word.
Yeah. Funnily, you should say that, because yesterday on my Better Practice, Better Life call, I just said, how's everyone going? How was January? And, what's everyone? And, one comment in the chat was, it's getting harder.
Yeah.
And, then other people piped in, and then I went back to that first person's comment. I said, do you want to come online and, do you want to unmute yourself and talk a little bit more about it? And that was the comment. AML, blah, 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 all this stuff. And it is actually, there's a lot happening.
A lot.
But over the years, there's also been a lot.
A lot. Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I talk about this is, the rate of change is it's getting quicker. We've had to navigate these things all over since I've been in the accounting industry for over 30 years. We've had RBLs, we've had this, we've changed things, and there's always been something. So the certainty is there's always going to be something, and, we have to learn to live with that. I've always seen that stuff as an opportunity.
Yeah.
So whilst it can be very overwhelming, see it as an opportunity. See how we can do things differently. So it might be there, say with AML, and I put in my newsletter. Actually, my newsletter this week had about the first one, because I talk about what I've been reading.
Yeah.
So I talked about payday super.
Yes.
And I just shared some information about payday super and how practice owners can be talking to their clients about that now in readiness. Second one was I talked about AML, which is who I've been listening to. So it was an AUSTRAC presentation that I was part of this week. And I shared the accountant's starter kit that's been put out by AUSTRAC.
Yes.
I would encourage any of my small and solo practice owners to go and check that out, because there's a lot of resources there. So I think with any of this stuff, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like that's a great example where we've had the regulator actually provide information. We also have professional bodies provide information on other things. So just before getting hyped up about more stuff that's coming, let's just sort of sit and pause for a little bit and then, think strategically about it. Okay, who can I buddy up and get help with? Is that a peer that we can actually share the load? Is it a part of a community like, my Balance Firm community, like some other Facebook communities, etc.? How can we actually not do this alone? And there are so many options. With something like AML, thinking about, and one of the things that I talked about in my newsletter is the reason why we're doing this. It's to bring us up to global standards. I know it doesn't make it easier that we've now got something else on our plate from 1 July, but really thinking about and reading into some of these things, why they're important. And from that, then we can have a better idea of how we can implement it better, how we can bring people along the ride with us, whether that be staff members, whether that be clients, whether we have to look at processes and do we have to increase prices? Do we have to do things differently? So I always feel about this, like, anything that's challenging, how can we see that as a growth opportunity?
Yeah.
How can we see that as maybe streamlining things? Do we need to, because I think one of the biggest challenges with accountants are they can't say no to a lot of people. So let's say there's more work to be done, and let's say we can't get more staff or we don't want more staff. Something has to give.
Yeah.
So therefore we have to look at our client base and think, okay, is there clients that would be better served from another practitioner? Do I have time? Are these clients profitable? Are they my ideal clients? Do I need to reset my client base? Do I need to reset the services that I offer? I've been doing this, but it's not really profitable because now I've crunched the numbers. Do I actually take that out and then add extra things in? So, with something like Payday Super, should we be, having offerings that we can help people with their cash flow? Should we be doing more tax planning this year and trying to build that in? Like, I just think we need to brainstorm some of this stuff.
Yeah, and see it as an opportunity, like
see
you
it as
said.
an opportunity. Like, I have seen all of that over the years, We had, electronic signing. That was a long time ago.
And that's great, by the way.
Yeah,
How good is
but
that?
we introduced that really early.
Yeah.
Again, it costs money, but I remember in a newsletter writing about why we'd implemented that. And don't be be fearful around this. So I just think, and with that, it was like, we're not going to be sending snail mail stuff out. This is how we're going to do things.
Yeah.
So that was a way that we could actually, make things more streamlined in our business.
Yeah.
So I'd get people to be thinking about not be so stressed and, buy into some of the hype or the negative out of this. Yes, it's challenging. Yes, it's going to be more work. But is this the impetus to create positive change in our practice?
Definitely. And do you know what? On that whole, this is an opportunity to see the positive and make things better. I recently was talking about AML and, people said to me, accountants said to me, I'm not doing that because the government's not paying me to do that extra compliance work. And I had someone from KPMG who works with Austrac too saying, it doesn't matter. It's actually just the right thing to do because money laundering is really shady and, connects to really shady things. So why would you not want to do that to help your practice and help people you work with and help your clients? And I feel like that really links in with, it's an opportunity, like you said, but then it's just the right thing to do.
Yes. And, and that's why, in my newsletter, I talked about some of the facts, how much it's like 82 or $89 billion a year, like just talking about some of the numbers, bringing us up to speed with global standards. And, a lot of people wouldn't realise that we're not actually complying. And I just think, and that potentially could affect people who want to trade with us.
Yeah, exactly.
Internationally.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, and this is an opportunity, and that's what I talked about in the newsletter, being more versed about why some of the changes are happening. And I did this with single touch payroll. I did it with a lot of things. And having those real business acumen type conversations with clients, it does actually elevate your standing. It shows you that you know more about just tax and accounting.
It makes you trustworthy.
And it's really like, I just feel that, and it's sort of that confidence thing when we're looking at something and we're teaching something that's quite interesting that they can then go and share with someone else. I just think that's a leadership. And that's why I like to see, some of these things. I do think it is leadership. Also that point about being successful in your own business, I think that shows leadership. Whereas sometimes people think, if I'm too successful, do people think I'm charging too much? But actually it's the opposite. If there's certain things that appeal to you and are in your vision for your business and personal success, chances are there's other people looking at you and wanting to have what you have.
Yeah.
So there'll be always people that will be negative and not have that nicer thing to say, but that says more about them than you.
Yeah.
And we just need to get our right tribe around us who actually can be empowered and inspired by those things.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, speaking of leadership and speaking of all these fantastic things you do, we should definitely touch on you being on the GST stewardship group and also on the TPB board. Tell us a little bit about those roles and what you do there, just to kind of change the tune of this podcast, because you've got so many great things to talk about.
Yeah. So with the GST stewardship group, that sort of led on. GST, it's an interesting one, because when GST came in, I had been in practice for 12 months.
Oh,
so I started my practice 1 July 99.
Yeah.
GST came in just, 12 months after that. I had a 3-month-old baby. So he was 3 months on my first child. So I had him 9 months after I started the practice. So GST, it was a really, it's a hectic time.
Yeah.
But it was, again, one of those changes that actually created heaps of opportunity for me. So it was really lovely to join the GST stewardship group. Going back a little bit before that, because I joined the GST stewardship group in 2021 and as their small business representative. And I believe up until when I was appointed, there wasn't actually a small business representative on there. Same as what I'm talking about before, like the professional bodies, the vendors, the resources. It was always at the top end of town.
Yeah, not at the bottom end.
Yeah. So in 2021, I was appointed the small business representative, and that followed on from when I joined I put my hand up for the single touch payroll readiness working group. So that was 2016. So when I saw that come through my inbox, I thought I'd really love to put my hand up for this.
Yeah.
I was still in practice, but, very passionate about the industry, very passionate about a level playing field, for all small businesses and small practitioners. So we can see there's a thread coming here. So, so 2016 I did that, and that was just amazing because we were able to really share the lens of a smaller practitioner and smaller business owners as the single touch payroll readiness, how it was going to affect, how could we actually communicate and get that buy-in from practitioners and their clients. And from the ATO's point of view, it was fantastic having, the lens of a practitioner, because I was a practitioner back then. So so I sort of did the single touch payroll readiness. We did some webinars and we did, events. We had one at Luna Park that I was involved in and one in Melbourne.
Cool.
And that was lots of fun. And then once we were implemented, then I went into the engagement. We went into sort of some engagement. So that lasted quite a few more years. And that's what led me to the GST stewardship group.
Yeah.
So I think it was all of those, that level playing field, the practical experience, and also having, the touch points with others that are on the ground. So with the GST, I've already finished the practice at that point. And then I was appointed chair in 2023, co-chair, which is really cool. Another career highlight, I think.
Gosh,
being
a feather
on that,
in your cap
being
amongst
on that,
many.
And I remember when I actually my first meeting when I did that 2021, I said it was almost like full circle that I'd been there from day one, and now I'm here helping, and talking with other stakeholders and really having those strategic discussions.
Yeah.
And the purpose of the GST stewardship group is, to improve the GST system and how it's administered, how people are experiencing the GST system, and then to make it easier, to get things right. Yeah. And harder for people to not. And I think it's a really exciting time for GST as well, because there's, with the technology, with more AI and just the digital 2030 ATO plan.
Yeah.
There's different ways of doing it. And remembering when we first started, well, you won't remember, when we first started, we had paper forms. We'd fill in paper forms, and then we got on to, when I used to go out to my clients' offices or their homes with baby in tow, I would do all their work there because accounting wasn't in the cloud then.
Yeah.
So I had to go out there, do the work, reconcile the accounts, check them, and do all of that while I was there. So, it's So GST has come, a long way from when it started as far as how we actually do GST.
And now everyone's calling for reform.
Yeah.
Amongst many other things.
Yeah.
Well, what's the group's, perspective on that? If people are saying, you're there to kind of, administer the system and talk about ways it can progress. When people are coming in and, putting submissions in and saying, let's reform it, or let's just get rid of it, or let's add something new, what do you guys say?
Well, that's outside the remit of what we actually do as part of that.
Yeah.
But I think, from a personal perspective, from GST, there hasn't been, any changes to the rates. We did have that small change for the threshold, unlike, say, New Zealand, where they've had two different increases. They introduced, I think, in the mid-80s. So I think for me, GST reform is part of that larger tax reform. Which, we've had multiple reviews.
We're not getting anytime soon.
and one thing there that I think I'd like to say there is, I remember at a conference years and years ago, it was a former politician who spoke and was saying about the red tape and, productivity and, all these things we're bringing in. Is it really working? Is it really working? A lot of this stuff is aimed at people doing the wrong thing, but it's having such an adverse effect on people that are doing the right thing. And I totally agree with that. But I think the discussion about tax reform generally is obviously not a very popular one. And what they said was that both political parties, they're just working to election cycles. So all of this stuff is really, it's not, it's like the things that you lose elections over, I guess.
Know.
And we've seen that.
They're just one-upping each other.
So
all
I feel like we have to have, better discussions.
Yeah.
We have to, and it's not the political, ball really.
Yeah.
And I think it really needs to be looked at there. And like I sort of alluded to before, any change is not, like a lot of changes aren't popular. A lot of discussions aren't easy to have. But all in all, I think the majority of people are very reasonable people, right?
Yeah.
They're reasonable if they're explained why things are, and sometimes maybe some short-term pain for the longer-term gain. And I know this might sound, really positive, and I have been referred to before as a bit Pollyannish, but, that I think I always see the good in stuff.
Yeah.
But I just think we probably need to have some more of those discussions.
Yeah.
And like little tweaks here and little tweaks there. Sometimes the intention might be to make it easy, but it makes it more difficult.
Yeah.
So, that's probably what I'd say about that. So
interesting.
Yeah, it could, I think that's, something that we need to look at.
Yeah,
definitely.
Amongst
but
many
also,
other things
again,
too, right?
from a practice perspective, it's like if it changes, this is just another thing. Whereas, that would be where a situation where we might say, well, okay, it's we can see maybe the benefits.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think all of that. Plenty of other countries change things.
Yeah,
plenty of other countries increase taxes and do different things for the good. As you talked about, the good of the good of our economy, the good of people.
Yeah,
and I often refer to countries that have a lot higher taxes than us, but their social systems, there's a lot of things that people are actually okay to pay because they're actually getting benefits in lots of other areas. So there has to be that give and take.
Yeah, definitely. Now, before we wrap up today, I definitely want to touch on your role on the TPB board and what you do there. Obviously, the TPB is very mysterious and just the best thing ever. I love the TPB. I report people to the TPB all the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I get some interesting comments on Accountants Daily.
Right.
Some very interesting ones. And I'll pick up the phone to the TPB and I'll say, I've seen this, they've said this, just thought I'd flag, la, la, la. But on the board, that's probably, a passion of yours to just, integrity and ethics, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
How is that? Do you enjoy it?
Look, I really love it. And again, another career highlight, I guess.
Yeah.
When I put my hand up for that, you're putting yourself out there, but, and a few things there. I saw the ad on LinkedIn. I then saw it come through my inbox, and one of my clients then actually messaged and said, you should go for this job.
And you thought, actually, yes, I totally should.
I thought that's a sign.
Yeah.
I'm very much, obviously very strategic as well, but I'm quite intuitive.
Oh my
so
God.
when I saw that, I thought, okay, I'm going to, definitely put my, my name forward because, I knew I had the skill sets. I knew I had that practical experience, and I had done the Australian Institute of Company Directors course a year or so before that. So from a governance, and I have sat on other boards, over the years, I really felt, it was time to put my hand up for some of these, larger board roles. And it's sort of, again, that career progression and evolution.
Yeah.
Always looking at doing things to better myself and, to keep things interesting, to contribute. And, flowing on from the Readiness Group and GST, that, the integrity, the level playing field, is just so important to me and our industry.
Yeah.
It really is. So, I was, I'm really loving it. I feel very privileged. I don't take the role lightly.
Yeah.
And, I'm really looking forward to how I can contribute positively to the strategic direction, the governance and sharing my experiences and what I'm, what I hear and, just different things. It just, they've got a different lens in some respects, but loving it.
Oh, I'm jealous. I want to be on the TPP board. It just seems like the coolest
and,
job.
As I said, I think, down the track I could see myself, on more boards.
Yeah.
We need more female participation.
Absolutely.
We need, someone with with my extensive chartered accounting experience, business acumen, running a business for, 27 years this year.
Wow.
And all of that. And just, and I think that the other thing that I think I bring to those roles and with everything I do, whether I write things or whether I'm speaking, is that, the professionalism, but also that empathy and how we can do things, empathetically and, that real human and, we really didn't talk much about AI, but I think, with AI, amazing, and I think there's a big role for it, but you never can replace that human touch.
Of course
and I
not.
think things like AI technology and doing things differently and doing things better in your practice can really allow you to, that human element to really, come to the fore.
Definitely. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It's been amazing having you and just such a full circle moment.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Imogen, for having me and good luck in your next chapter.
Thank you. If you would like to get in contact with me, you can reach me for only a few days more at imogen.wilson@momentummedia.com.au. Until next time, bye for now.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.